Good morning, everyone. Last time we discussed the basic concepts of hypothetical proposition. We distinguished it from categorical proposition. We also mentioned the kinds of hypothetical proposition, namely conditional proposition, disjunctive proposition, and conjunctive proposition. We also mentioned that there are two types of disjunctive proposition, proper and improper disjunctive. As well as in conjunctive proposition, we have two-part and more than two-part conjunctive proposition. Those concepts are important in understanding today's lesson, okay, the rules of hypothetical syllogism. Hypothetical syllogism is one which contains hypothetical proposition as major premise. If you remember our discussion about syllogism, it is defined as a set of three propositions, one of which is meant to be supported by other claims. It is called hypothetical syllogism because the major premise, I have to emphasize that it is the major premise, which is hypothetical proposition, while the minor premise and the conclusion are categorical propositions. Like, for example, this conditional syllogism. Okay. If Janet is a PhD holder, then she is a doctor. But Janet is a PhD holder. Ergo, she is a doctor. What type of syllogism is this? Is this a syllogism? Yes, it is a set of three propositions. And there is a conclusion, one of which is meant to be supported by others. Okay? But the major premise here is conditional proposition. That's why we call it conditional syllogism. You remember, conditional proposition or all hypothetical propositions, they are compound propositions, meaning it is it involves two two judgments. What are they? Janet is a PhD holder. That's antecedent, correct? That's antecedent. And Janet is a doctor, or she is a doctor. Consequent. Okay? In the minor premise, we affirm the antecedent. But Janet is a PhD holder. You have to observe that this is a categorical proposition. And in the conclusion, we also affirm the consequent. She is a doctor. That is also a categorical proposition. So it falls under the definition of conditional syllogism. It is a set of three propositions, and there's a conclusion. Okay. And the major premise is a conditional proposition, while the minor premise and the conclusion are categorical propositions. All right. Another example. If a person is a Catholic, then he is a Christian. My friend is not a Christian, therefore he is not a Catholic. What type of syllogism is this? This is a conditional syllogism because the major premise is a conditional proposition, while the minor premise and the conclusion are categorical propositions. The antecedent here is a person is a Catholic. The consequent is he is a Christian. In the minor premise, we denied the consequent, no? We denied the consequent. We said my friend is not a Christian. Therefore, he is not a Catholic. In the conclusion, we also denied the antecedent. Later, you will understand that is a valid conditional syllogism, modus tollens. Now, the symbols that we use in conditional syllogism are this. Small letter P, right, for antecedent. Small letter P, small letter P. Then small letter Q for consequent. And the symbol for conditional relation or if-then relation is a horseshoe. Okay, it is a horseshoe. Then you remember In categorical syllogism, the symbol for negation is a negative sign. Symbol for positing or affirming is the affirmative sign, the plus sign. Here, the symbol for negation is a curl. A curl. And then, andyan pa rin yung conclusion symbol, which is a three dots. Three dots. All right. Now, remember, there are only two valid variations of conditional syllogism. We call it the modus ponens and the modus tollens. What is a modus ponens? The modus ponens, you affirm the antecedent in the minor premise, and you also affirm the consequent in the conclusion. That's why this is our schema. If P then Q, but there is P, therefore there is Q. We call it modus ponens. Another valid variation is the modus tollens. Denying process to, but we deny the consequent. It is only applicable to the consequent. You deny the consequent in the minor premise, you also deny the antecedent in the conclusion. You P then Q, but there is no Q, therefore there is no P. In some books, you will find the terms constructive mood and destructive mood. Okay? Constructive mood pertains to modus ponens. You affirm the antecedent in the minor premise, and you also affirm the consequent in the conclusion, modus ponens. Okay? Destructive mood or negation is applicable only in what component? In the consequent. If you deny the consequent in the minor premise, you also have to deny the antecedent in the conclusion. That is destructive mood or modus tollens. Rule number 1 states that in a valid conditional syllogism, if the antecedent is affirmed, the consequent must be affirmed as well. Modus ponens, no? This is modus ponens. If the antecedent is affirmed, the consequent must be affirmed as well. Why? Because the antecedent is a condition of the consequent. For example, if you fail this subject, you must repeat this on summer, which is true, di ba? Remember, what is the basis of truth and falsehood of conditional proposition, or even disjunctive and conjunctive? Is it reality? No, it's not the same with categorical proposition. You remember, no? In our discussion, in categorical proposition, it is true if it corresponds to reality. For example, Laudato Si is not a scientific document. Is that true or false? The basis should be reality. If in fact it is not a scientific document, which is true. Okay? Here, in hypothetical proposition, the basis of truth and falsehood is what? Necessary or causal connection. Okay? If you fail in this subject, you must repeat this on summer. This is true. Okay? Because there is a necessary or causal connection or causal relation between the antecedent and the consequent. If you say, you fail in this subject, okay, the antecedent is affirmed. You fail in this subject. You fail in this subject is the antecedent, you say in the minor premise, but you fail in this subject. So therefore, you must repeat this on summer. Is this valid? Yes. Because rule number 1 states that if the antecedent is affirmed, the consequent must be affirmed. If you remember, this is what we call modus ponens. Rule number 2 states that if the consequent is denied, the antecedent must be denied as well. Okay? This is what we call modus tollens. For example, if Hello Kitty is a cat, then she is a mammal. Is this, what type of proposition is this? Conditional. Is this true? Yes. Because there is a necessary relation between Hello Kitty is a cat and she is a mammal. If an individual is a cat, then that being is a mammal. So that's true. If Hello Kitty is a cat, then she is a mammal. But she is not a mammal. Therefore, she is not a cat. Valid? Yes. Okay, rule number 2 states that if you deny the consequent in the minor premise, you have to deny also the antecedent in the conclusion. Nasunod? Yes. If Hello Kitty is a cat, then she is a mammal. But she is not a mammal. You deny the consequent, correct? Therefore, she is not a cat. If the uh, conditional is not present, then the condition is not present as well. If Hello Kitty is not a mammal, then it cannot be the case that she is a cat. Can you follow? That is a valid variation, modus tollens. Rule number 2. Rule number 3, if the antecedent is denied, then the consequent is doubtful. This is not, if you derive a conclusion, then that is faulty conditional syllogism. Can you follow? The name of the fallacy is faulty conditional syllogism. Example, if it rains, then the ground is wet. It does not rain. Therefore, the ground is not wet. It doesn't follow. It can also be the case that the ground is wet because raining is not the only condition for the ground to be wet. There are other possibilities or conditions for the ground to be wet. For example, diniligan mo yan o may dumaan diyang truck ng nagdi-deliver ng cube ice, it's possible that the ground will be wet because raining is not the only condition for the ground to be wet. So if you deny the antecedent in the minor premise, the consequent should be doubtful. You cannot derive a valid conclusion from that. But you say the ground is not wet. Is that valid? The answer is no. It is invalid. What's the name of the fallacy? Faulty conditional syllogism. Rule number 4, if the consequent is affirmed, the antecedent is doubtful also. So the constructive mood is not applicable in consequent as we have mentioned. Okay? If Daffy Duck is a dog, then she is a mammal. Correct. True. But she is a mammal. Therefore, she is a dog. No. Okay? If a being is a mammal, necessarily that mammal is a dog. Marami namang mammal eh, hindi lang naman dog. So if you affirm the consequent, the antecedent is doubtful. If you say she is a dog, that is an invalid argument. No? That is an invalid conditional syllogism. Or we call it faulty conditional syllogism. Now, what is the schema of this? If you are asked to give the schema, if I am a Cebuano, if I'm a Cebuano, then I'm a Filipino. Correct, ano? True yan. I'm a Cebuano, therefore I'm a Filipino. The schema of that is, if P then Q, but there is P, therefore there is Q. Valid? This is valid. Modus ponens. Modus ponens. Another example. If I'm a human person, then I'm a rational being. True. True yan, di ba? There is a necessary relation between being a human and being a rational being, right? But I'm not a rational being, therefore I'm not a human person. What is the schema of this? If P then Q, but there is no Q, therefore there is no P. Valid? Yes. Okay, modus tollens. This is valid modus tollens. Another example. If this act is not morally evil, then it is permissible. Again, if this act is not morally evil, then it is permissible, which is true. But it is not permissible. Okay? Therefore, it is morally evil. This is if P then Q, but there is no Q. Okay, you say the consequent is not present, ano? It is not permissible. Therefore, it is morally evil. There is no P. Okay, dito, not morally evil. Here in the conclusion, you say morally evil siya. So P then Q, but there is no Q, therefore there is no P. Valid? Yes. Modus tollens. How about this one? If the theory is not validated by reason, then it is unfounded. True. But it is unfounded, therefore it is not validated by reason. The schema is if P then Q, but there is Q, therefore there is P. Valid? No, this is not valid. Okay? This is faulty conditional syllogism. Okay? The rule says if the consequent is affirmed, okay, if the consequent is affirmed, the antecedent must be doubtful. But you say it's necessarily true. The P is necessarily present, which is not a valid variation. You have to remember there are only two valid variations or mood in conditional syllogism, modus ponens, modus tollens. This is neither modus ponens, because modus ponens is applicable only to P. With P then Q, but there is P. Therefore, there is Q. Baligtad ito. You cannot apply the constructive mood in consequent. Okay. Another example. You have to remember that there are only two valid variations of conditional syllogism, modus ponens and modus tollens, or else you call it faulty conditional syllogism. Is this valid? If the barometer is rising, we may expect fair weather. But we may expect fair weather. Okay? What do we do in the minor premise? We affirm the consequent. Therefore, the barometer is rising. Valid? Faulty conditional syllogism. Okay? If you affirm the consequent, what should be the truth value of the antecedent? It must be doubtful. You should not conclude, but you derive a conclusion. You say the barometer is rising. Faulty conditional syllogism. If this man is a patriot, then he is not a traitor. Okay? True. But he is not a patriot. Therefore, he is a traitor. Okay? Valid or invalid? This is invalid. Ano? Faulty conditional syllogism. The rule says, if the consequent is denied, if the antecedent is denied, what do we do in the minor premise here? This is the antecedent, correct? If the antecedent is denied, the consequent must be doubtful. But you also denied the consequent. P then Q, but there is no P. Therefore, there is no Q. Invalid. Rule number 3. If that person is not your relative, then he is not your brother. True. If that person is not your relative, then he is not your brother. Okay? But he is your brother. Therefore, he is your relative. Okay? What do we do here? We denied the consequent, and we deny also the antecedent. Valid? Valid. Modus tollens. Valid modus tollens. If there is no law, then there would be disorder in society. Okay? But there is no law. Therefore, there would be disorder in society. Okay? Valid or invalid? Valid modus ponens. Now, in exam, you will be asked to derive conclusion. If you can derive a conclusion, then give the conclusion. But if you cannot derive a valid conclusion, okay, then your answer is no valid conclusion. Like in this case, if he violated Article 133 of the Revised Penal Code or offending religious feeling, then the penalty is arresto mayor to prisión correccional. But he violated Article 133 of the Revised Penal Code. What should be your conclusion? What do we do in the minor premise? We affirm what? Okay? What do we do in the minor premise? We affirm the antecedent. If he violated Article 133 of the Revised Penal Code, okay, he violated Article 133 of the Revised Penal Code. We affirm it. What should be the, can we derive a valid conclusion? Yes. Rule number one, if you affirm the antecedent, you also affirm the consequent in the conclusion. So what should be your conclusion? Therefore, the penalty is arresto mayor to prisión correccional. Okay? About this one. If the middle term of a categorical syllogism is not distributed at least once, then it is not valid. True, ano? Rule number 4 in rules of categorical syllogism. But it is valid. You denied. You denied the consequent. What should be your conclusion? The conclusion, can we derive a conclusion? Yes. Rule number 2, if you deny the consequent, you also have to deny the antecedent, modus tollens, no? So your conclusion should be, therefore, the middle term of that categorical syllogism is distributed at least once. Okay? Next, if a categorical syllogism has 5 terms, then it is invalid. True. Okay? So yan. But it is invalid. What should be your conclusion? Can we conclude that, therefore, the categorical syllogism has 5 terms? No. Okay? If you have, rule number 4, if you affirm the consequent, the antecedent is doubtful. Okay? Fallacy of 4 terms lamang ba ang condition to become for the categorical syllogism to be invalid? No. There are other conditions for the categorical syllogism to be invalid. If you say it is invalid, your answer must be no valid conclusion. Rule number 4. Okay, let's go to another kind of hypothetical syllogism. This is what we call disjunctive syllogism. This syllogism consists of a disjunctive proposition as major premise and categorical propositions as minor premise and conclusion. For example, the teacher is either present or absent. What kind of proposition is this? Disjunctive. It's an in either or proposition. Okay. So the major premise here is a disjunctive proposition. You have to remember that disjunctive proposition has 2 components. What are they? The first disjunct and the second disjunct. Remember? What is the first disjunct here? The teacher is present. The second disjunct is the teacher is absent. What do we do in the minor premise? Okay, we affirm, we affirm the first disjunct in the minor premise. So you have to deny. You have to deny the second disjunct in the conclusion. So this is disjunctive syllogism because the major premise is a disjunctive proposition, while the minor premise in the conclusions are categorical propositions. Okay. Rule number 1. In a valid disjunctive syllogism, if one disjunct is denied, the other disjunct must be accepted. Okay? You have to remember that denying process is always a valid variation in disjunctive syllogism, be it proper or improper. Okay? Meaning we cannot deny both disjuncts. However, if one disjunct is affirmed or accepted, the other part may be denied or accepted. It depends on the type of proposition. The affirming process or positing process is only applicable, it will only be valid if the disjunctive proposition is proper. If it is improper disjunctive, then affirming process is not valid. Symbols. Small letter P, it pertains to first disjunct. Small letter Q, second disjunct. So magkaiba na yan, ha? Hindi na ito antecedent, consequent. First disjunct, P. Second disjunct, Q. Then the symbol for disjunctive relation, or the symbol for disjunction is a wedge. A wedge, ano? Palakol, panghiwa, divisor. Okay? Nandiyan pa rin yung negation, curl, and the three dots for the conclusion. For example, the students either present or absent. Major premise, disjunctive proposition, no? Which is true. Students either present or absent, but Carla is present, therefore she is not absent. So this is our schema. Either P or Q, but there is P, therefore there is no Q. Okay, this one, either P or Q, but there is P, therefore there is no Q. Okay. Wait. How about this one? Yeah, you have to remember again that you have two types of disjunction, proper disjunction and improper disjunction. Proper disjunctive proposition if the alternatives are mutually exclusive and the list of alternatives is complete. You have two requisites for a disjunctive proposition to be proper. Number one, the alternatives are mutually exclusive and the list of alternatives is complete. If one alternative is true, the other must be false. Okay. If one alternative is false, the other must be true because they are mutually exclusive. Can you follow? Okay. And the list of alternatives is complete. In proper disjunctive syllogism, there are two valid variations. Okay. We call it positing process and denying process. If you posit the P in the minor premise, you have to deny the Q in the conclusion. Same thing, if you posit, if you affirm, okay, the consequent in the minor premise, you have to deny the other. You have to deny the first disjunct. You have to deny the first disjunct in the conclusion. We call it positing process. Denying process is also valid because they are mutually exclusive and the list of alternatives is complete. If you deny one, you have to affirm the other. If you deny the first disjunct, you have to deny the second disjunct. If you deny the second disjunct, you have to deny the first disjunct. Okay? When the minor premise accepts one disjunct, this is for the iteration, the conclusion must deny the other disjunct. Okay? What is this? Positing process. For example, the answer is either correct or wrong. You have to evaluate first the major premise. Is this proper or improper? The answer is either correct or wrong. They are mutually exclusive. Can an answer be correct and wrong at the same time? No. Okay? So they are mutually exclusive. Is the list of alternatives complete? Yes. Okay? And then what do we do in the minor premise? His answer is correct. You say his answer is correct. So we affirm, ano? We affirm the first disjunct in the conclusion. You denied. You have to deny the second disjunct. So you say either P or Q, but there is P, therefore there is no Q. All right? There is no Q. Valid? Yes. What variation? Positing process. Valid positing process. All right. When the minor premise denies one disjunct, the conclusion must accept the other disjunct. What is this? This is the denying process. Example, the students either physically absent or present, but he is not physically present. Therefore, he is physically absent. Either P or Q. This is either P or Q, but there is no Q. You deny the second disjunct. So you have to affirm the first disjunct. Valid? Yes. Valid denying process. If you are asked to determine the schema, what is your answer for this syllogism? A man who was appointed to the office is either competent or incompetent. So this is proper. Mutual ex Can that man appointed in office be competent and incompetent at the same time? No, mutual exclusive. And the list is complete. But he is incompetent. Okay. Therefore, he is not competent. So what is the schema of this? This is either P or Q, but there is Q. Therefore, there is no P. Correct? Ito, yung incompetent, sinabi mo it's present, but there is Q. Okay? Therefore, there is no P. He is not competent. Valid? Yes, valid positing process. A Filipino is either a natural born or a naturalized citizen of the Philippines. But this Filipino is not a natural born citizen. Therefore, he is a naturalized citizen of the Philippines. First, evaluate the major premise. Is this proper or improper? So, how to determine whether the disjunctive proposition is proper? So, there are two requisites. Are the alternants mutually exclusive? Can you be natural born citizen and naturalized citizen of the Philippines at the same time? No. They are mutually exclusive and the list is complete. Ano? What do we do so this is a proper disjunctive. But this Filipino is not a natural born citizen of the Philippines. Therefore, he is a naturalized citizen of the Philippines. Okay, you deny the first disjunct. You have to affirm the second disjunct. Either P or Q, but there is no P, therefore there is Q. Valid denying process. All right? The law is either constitutional or unconstitutional, but anti-cybercrime law is unconstitutional. Therefore, it is also constitutional. Okay? The major premise is proper, and you affirm the second disjunct, and you also affirm the first disjunct in the conclusion. Valid. Okay, faulty yan. Faulty disjunctive syllogism. If you affirm one, you have to deny the other disjunct. Nasunod ba yung rule? No. Faulty disjunctive syllogism. Is this proper or improper disjunctive proposition? Keeper Ravenna is either a Tomasian or an Athenian. Proper? Okay. Can Kiefer Ravenna be a Tomasian and an Athenian at the same time? What are the alternants here? What are the disjuncts? Kiefer Ravenna is a Tomasian. Kiefer Ravenna is an Athenian. Are the disjuncts mutually exclusive? The answer is no. It is possible that a person is a Tomasian and an Athenian at the same time. Let's say, high school siya doon, and then sa Ateneo, and then college sa UST. So, he is Athenian and Tomasian at the same time. O kaya kahit nga sabay, naglo-law school ka sa Rockwell, Athenian ka, and then nag-graduate school ka sa UST Graduate School. So, this is not mutually exclusive. At the same time, the list of alternatives is not complete. This is improper, no? Not mutually exclusive, and the list is not complete. You have improper disjunctive syllogism if the alternants are not mutually exclusive and or the list is not complete. Here, if one disjunct is false, then the other one must be true. Okay? Because denying process is always a valid process in disjunctive syllogism. But if one is true, the other is doubtful. Affirming process is not a valid variation, or positing process is not a valid variation in improper disjunctive. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. There is only one valid variation of improper disjunctive syllogism. What is that? Denying process. So you have to observe that denying process is always valid. What is that? If you deny one disjunct, you have to affirm the other disjunct, because disjunctive proposition expresses the impossibility that both the alternants are not present. Nilagay mo pa sa either or kung wala namang true. If one is denied, the other one must be affirmed. Okay, this is what we call denying process. If you deny the first disjunct, you have to affirm the second disjunct. If you deny the second disjunct, you have to affirm the first disjunct. Example, the student either studies math or logic. First, evaluate the major premise. Is this proper or improper? The answer is this is improper. Why? First requisite. Are the alternants mutually exclusive? What is the first disjunct? The student studies math. Second disjunct, the student studies logic. Okay? Can you study math and logic at the same time? Yes. Kaya nga bumabagsak eh, pinagsasabay-sabay. Okay? This is systematic. So that's possible. And the list of alternatives is not complete. Math lamang ba at logic ang pwede mong aralin bilang isang estudyante? No. Improper. But he is not studying logic. You deny the second disjunct. Okay? In the minor premise. Therefore, he is studying math. Valid or invalid? Valid yan. Okay? Valid denying process. Why do we need to affirm the other disjunct in the conclusion? Because you denied the first disjunct in the minor premise. You have to affirm the first disjunct in the conclusion, because it is in an either or. The presupposition is at least one of the alternatives is true. Okay. The student either studies math or English, but he is studying math. Affirming process. You affirm the first disjunct. He is studying math. Therefore, he is not studying English. No, that's doubtful. We call it faulty disjunctive syllogism. Okay? Because it's possible that that student is studying math and English at the same time. It's possible. Okay. Key points. Analyze the major premise. Is the major premise proper or improper disjunctive proposition? If it is proper, there are two valid variations: positing process and denying process. However, if the major premise is improper disjunctive, there is only one valid variation: denying process. Observe that denying process is always valid. What is denying process? If you deny one disjunct, you have to affirm the other disjunct, because disjunction presupposes that at least one of the alternatives is present or true. A student can either pass or fail. Mahalaga kasi yung you determine whether the major premise is proper or improper. A student can either pass or fail a subject. Proper or improper? Proper. Mutually exclusive. Okay? The political situation is either stable or unstable. Stable, unstable, proper. Okay? Either James is the one responsible for this trouble or Justin. Proper or improper? The answer is improper. It's possible that both Justin and James are responsible for this trouble. If you say, Either James is the one responsible for this trouble or Justin. Okay? But James is the one responsible for this trouble. Can we say that Justin is not the one responsible for this trouble? No, because affirming process or positing process is not valid in improper. But if you say either James is the one responsible for this trouble or Justin, but Justin is not the one responsible for this trouble. Therefore, James is the one responsible for this trouble. Valid? Yes. Denying process. We can either transact with Japanese or Americans. Proper or improper? What's the answer? Improper. Okay? Because it's possible that you transact, we transact with Japanese and Americans at the same time. Meaning, the alternants here are not mutually exclusive. As well as, sa Japanese lamang ba, sa Americans tayo pwedeng mag-transact? No. The list of alternatives is not complete. So it falls under improper. He is either in Manila or in Cebu. Okay? What is this? Proper or improper? Use the two requisites. Are the alternants mutually exclusive? Yes. Can you be in Manila and in Cebu at the same time? No. Mutually exclusive. The problem here is the list of alternatives is not complete. Okay? The list of not alternatives is not complete. So, saan to magpo-fall? Sa proper or improper? So, as I mentioned in our previous discussion, it will fall under proper disjunctive. Ano? Okay? Because again, the sense of this is conjunctive. Okay? He is either in Manila or in Cebu. Okay? If you use denying process here, di ba? We mentioned that denying process is always valid. It's always valid in disjunctive syllogism. Okay? If you say, but he is not in Manila, necessarily he is in Cebu, you have to say yes. Because you put that in an either or. You put that statement in an either or. And an either or presupposes that at least one of the alternatives is true. So if one is absent, the other one must be present. Okay? But in reality, this is more than two-part conjunctive, you know, because it cannot, the sense of this is, it cannot be the case that he is in Manila and in Cebu at the same time. Okay? Kasi later you will understand in conjunctive syllogism, affirming process is always valid. And denying process is not is only valid in two part. In more than two part, like in this case, it's not it should not be valid. Okay? But you have to remember this. If you put this in either or, this will fall under proper disjunctive. Okay? Proper disjunctive. Now let's discuss conjunctive syllogism. It is a syllogism where the major premise expresses two things cannot be true simultaneously. So the major premise is conjunctive proposition, while the minor premise and the conclusion are categorical propositions. Okay? The expression of conjunctive proposition is the impossibility of simultaneous absence. Okay? Simultaneous, the major premise expresses two things cannot be true simultaneously. Okay? The sense of conjunctive proposition is the impossibility of simultaneous presence. What I mean is presence. The simultaneous presence of two things. That's why affirming process is always valid in conjunctive syllogism. Why? Because if one is present, the other one must be absent. Necessarily yun. Hindi pwede kasi silang sabay na present. Like in our previous example. It cannot be the case that he is in Manila and in Cebu at the same time. but he is in Manila, necessarily he is in Cebu. Okay? But he is in Manila, necessarily he is not in Cebu. That's what I mean. Okay? It expresses that two things cannot be true simultaneously. Example, a PBA game cannot be in Philippine Arena and in MOA Arena at the same time. Is that true? Yes. Okay, there is necessary relation between the two uh, uh, between the two uh, conjuncts, ano ka? Between the two conjuncts. But the game is played in MOA Arena. The game is played in MOA Arena. Therefore, it is not played in Philippine Arena. Later, you will understand this is valid positing process, ano? Valid positing process because positing process is always valid, right? It cannot be the case that a habit is a virtue and vice at the same time. But greed is not a virtue. Therefore, it is a vice. What is the schema of this? Okay. Here you have P and Q, but greed is not a virtue. Okay. There is no P. Mm, okay. It cannot be the case that P and Q, but there is no P, therefore there is Q. So, denying process, that's valid because that is two-part. Okay. Note, positing process is always a valid pattern in conjunctive syllogism. Okay? You differentiate, you differentiate it with disjunctive syllogism. So disjunctive syllogism, what is the always valid pattern? Denying process. Here, the always valid pattern is positing process. Why? Because that's the expression of conjunctive proposition. The impossibility, okay, of simultaneous reality of two things. So if you affirm one, you have to deny the other. Meaning, if you affirm one conjunct, then you must deny the possibility of the other conjunct because the idea of a conjunctive proposition is the impossibility of simultaneous reality of two things. And denying process is only applicable in two-part conjunctive. Okay. So, kailan ba magkakaroon ng two-part conjunctive? Of course, all conjunctive propositions are mutually exclusive, no? The conjuncts are mutually exclusive. Given na yan. Okay? All conjunctive propositions, okay, have conjuncts that are mutually exclusive because that's the expression of conjunction. It cannot be the case that P and Q. Can you follow? That's the expression of conjunctive proposition. It cannot be the case that P and Q, the conjuncts are mutually exclusive. Okay? However, if you only have two conjuncts, two possible conjuncts, then that is two-part conjunct. All right? It cannot be the case that you are physically present and physically absent, which is true. Di ba? All right? Is that two-part or more than two-part? Two-part. Dalawa lang naman yung conjuncts dyan, yung options dyan, present or absent. Okay. However, it cannot be the case that you are in Manila and Cebu at the same time. Is that two-part or more than two-part? More than two-part. Okay? So, mutually exclusive yung alternates, but the list of alternatives is not complete. It cannot be the case that Congressman Pacquiao is efficient and inefficient at the same time. Congressman Pacquiao is not efficient, so he is inefficient. Okay? So this is about the performance of Manny Pacquiao, for example, as congressman. So it's either efficient or inefficient. Two-part. But he is not efficient. Okay? You deny one, you have to affirm the other because that is a two-part conjunctive. Valid ito. If the major premise is more than two-part conjunctive proposition, then the positing process is the only valid pattern. Example, it cannot be the case that the suspect is in Manila and in USA at the same time. But reports say that the suspect is not in USA. Therefore, he is in Manila. Invalid. Okay? If you deny one conjunct, okay, the other conjunct must be doubtful. Okay? Kasi hindi lang naman sa Manila and USA ang pwedeng puntahan ng suspect. You say, the report says the suspect is not in US. Therefore, he is in Manila. No, it's not always the case. There is no necessary uh, connection to derive that conclusion. Invalid. And what's the name of the fallacy? Faulty. Faulty conjunctive syllogism. How about this one? So you determine uh, the type of conjunction is that two-part or more than two-part. And then valid ba siya or invalid? And then what process? A person who adheres to the principle, so babalik ito sa exam nyo, ha? Karalan nyo yan. Tingnan nyo yung mga examples natin dito. A person who adheres to the principle of justice and peace cannot also accept violence and terrorism. Is that two-part or more than two-part? Okay, more than two-part yan. But the president adheres to the principle of justice and peace. Hear me. Ergo, the president cannot accept violence and terrorism. Okay? More than two-part positing process, valid. Lagi naman kasing valid ang positing process, correct? Okay? More than two-part, positing process, valid. This is more than two-part kasi hindi lang naman yun ang pwedeng panghawakang prinsipyo ng isang tao. So, but they are mutually exclusive. You cannot talk peace and have a gun, correct? They are mutually exclusive. That's why you put that in a conjunctive statement. A person who adheres to the principle of justice and peace cannot also accept violence and terrorism. But you say one is present. Okay? The president adheres to the principle of justice and peace. Cannot be the case that P and Q, but there is P, therefore there is no Q. Next, the teacher cannot be present and absent at the same time, but the teacher is not present, therefore she is absent. This is two-part denying process valid. Remember, in two-part, denying and positing are valid. This is two-part because there are only two conjuncts possible, ano? Being present and being absent. Number 3, one cannot fight corruption and at the same time practice it. Okay? And some government officials are practicing it, therefore those officials cannot fight it. This is more than two-part positing process valid. This is more than two-part, ano? Hindi lang naman yun ang pwede mong labanan. One cannot face the sun and face his own shadow simultaneously. True. So yan, no? Can you face can you face the sun and your shadow simultaneously? No. But the question is that two-part or more than two-part? The answer is more than two-part. Hindi lang naman yun ang pwede mong harapan na direction. Yung dalawang iyon, ano? Dalawang iyon. But I am not facing the sun. So definitely, I am facing my shadow. Valid? Invalid. Invalid yan. Denying process yan. Pag ba hindi ka nakaharap sa araw, necessarily nakaharap ka sa shadow mo. No? Pwedeng sa iba kang direction nakaharap. Okay? More than process, denying process, invalid, or what we call faulty conjunctive syllogism. Can you follow? Aralin niyo yan. Number five, one cannot be married and single too. Okay, but he is married, therefore he cannot be single. Two-part, positing process, valid. Dali lang yan. Number six, one cannot study properly and listen to the radio. Okay? But he is listening to the radio. Therefore, he cannot be studying properly. More than two-part yan. More than two-part, positing process, valid. Positing process is always valid, you know? It cannot be the case that P and Q, but there is Q. Therefore, there is no P. Valid. A person cannot be a Negro and a Caucasian at the same time. True. But he is not a Negro. Therefore, he must be a Caucasian. Okay? The major premise is more than two-part, and the process is denying process invalid. Okay? More than two-part, and then denying process invalid. One cannot be an atheist and a true Christian at the same time. My friend is not an atheist, therefore he is a true Christian. So more than two-part, denying process invalid. Okay? The mastermind cannot be in Iraq and Kuwait at the same time. True. But this is more than two-part, correct? Definitely, he cannot be in Kuwait. Therefore, he must be in Iraq. Valid? Valid. More than two-part, denying process, invalid. Now, if you are asked to derive conclusion, you may write the conclusion or say no valid conclusion. One cannot be a loyal NPA rebel and a loyal military soldier at the same time, which is true, no? Mutually exclusive. But he is not a loyal military soldier. No valid conclusion because this is more than two-part and denying process. You denied the second conjunct. The first conjunct must be uh, doubtful. No valid conclusion. Pagiging NPA rebel at pagiging military lang bang ang conjuncts mo? No. A Filipino cannot be a Muslim and a Christian at the same time. But Paulo Bulado is a devout Christian, affirming process. Therefore, what should be your conclusion? Affirming, positing process yan. Can you derive a conclusion? Yes, because positing process is always a valid pattern in conjunctive syllogism. Therefore, he is not a Muslim. Okay? It cannot be the case that P and Q, but there is Q. Therefore, there is no P. Okay? Positing process. One cannot sleep and study his lesson simultaneously. True, but this is more than two-part. Okay? But he is not studying his lessons. More than two-part to, no? In the denying process, what should be your conclusion? What can you derive a conclusion? So no valid conclusion can be derived. Pope Francis cannot be in Manila and in Tacloban at the same time. So, conjunctive, which is true, but this is more than two-part, ano? But he is not in Manila, denying process. Can we derive a conclusion? Answer is no. No valid conclusion. Okay. If Manny Pacquiao will join The Voice, okay, if Manny Pacquiao will join The Voice, uh, he cannot choose Coach Leia and Coach Sarah at the same time. But the Pambansang Kamao did not choose Coach Sarah. Can you derive a valid conclusion? So this is more than two-part kasi hindi lang naman dalawa yung coaches doon. If you know that TV show, hindi lang naman dalawa yon, and then he did not choose Coach Sarah. Can we necessarily conclude that he chose Coach Leia? No. No valid conclusion. No valid conclusion. So that's it. You study this material and then we'll go back with the quiz. Thank you very much.